Elizabeth II's illegitimate birth in popular culture and the ambiguity of the crown, by J. Gregory Hallett. Introducing Elizabeth. Episode 1. On the 26th of April 1923, Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon was married, but it was her maid who married. Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon's maid leaves from 17 Bruton Street to marry George, Duke of York, later King George VI, who ruled 1936 to 1952. The 26th of April 1923 marriage was the limit of the Earl of Strathmore's tolerance, Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon's father, after which he got a cold preventing correspondence. And any future birth at number 17 was not on the cards. The 26th of April 1923 wedding with strained Earl and Countess of Strathmore overseeing their daughter's maid, Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon's maid, usurping the marriage to George, Duke of York. Earl and Countess of Strathmore doing their best to ignore the maid of their daughter, Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon. George, Duke of York didn't know any better with an IQ of 67. Maximum ignore. Maximum ignore. Maximum ignore. Maximum ignore. King George V was illegitimate son of Tsar Alexander III of Russia. Mary of Teck was the only blood royal, but she was a mulatto, caked in white makeup. Empress consort of India turban. Maximum white for a quarter black. King George V, hurry up. Get this part of the contract over and done with. The real Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon's father, the Earl of Strathmore, refused to let Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon's maid give birth in his number 17 Bruton Street, so King George V intervened, and the birth of Elizabeth happened at number 5 Bruton Street, where King George V had an illegitimate son with Hilda Masters, one Anthony Blunt, aged 17, later a KGB spy and surveyor of King George VI pictures, 1945 to 1952, then surveyor of Queen Elizabeth II pictures, 1952 to 1973. King George V gave his wife Mary of Teck's used dresses to Hilda Masters in exchange for sex, resulting in Anthony Blunt. Elizabeth was born at Blunt's number 5 Bruton Street home above the Coach and Horses pub. Number 17 Bruton Street, London W1, officially the birthplace of HM Queen Elizabeth II circa 1926. Number 17 Bruton Street, Mayfair. Or Number 5 Bruton Street, 100 yards east. Elizabeth Alexandra Mary Windsor was illegitimate. She was actually Elizabeth Alexandra Mary Mountbatten, and was not highly thought of, so she was born above the pub at number 5 Bruton Street. Coach and Horses pub at number 5 B Street. Coach and Horses. Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon's maid soon after the 21st of April 1926 leaves with baby in tow, carried by a servant. This could be 17 Bruton Street entrance, or another on Bruton, and not necessarily from inside the house of number 17. King George V had more control for the illegitimate couple at number 5 Bruton Street above the Coach and Horses pub where Hilda Masters and their son Anthony Blunt lived. Is this even the same white building? The sperm donor father, Winston Churchill, and Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon's maid ice cream baby was born the 21st of April 1926 at number 5 Bruton Street, posing as number 17. The Earl of Strathmore had caught a cold and refused to let Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon's maid give birth at his home. The Royal Post, A look at 17 Bruton Street, November 16, 2014. The Strathmore family moved to 17 Bruton Street in 1920 from their previous residence at 20 St James's Square, but Strathmore moved into 17 Bruton Street after April 1921 as one of many homes. Several of the letters documented in the book, counting one's blessings, the selected letters of Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, the 9th of May 2013, were written there, all reference going to and from the house. In April 1921, Elizabeth wrote this letter to her governess Beryl Pointman from the Strathmore's stately Hertfordshire home St Paul's, Waldenbury. The 12th of April 1921 to Beryl Pointman, St Paul's, Waldenbury. Dear M, Mother and I have been here since Christmas now, isn't it extraordinary? I am longing for 17 Bruton Street to be finished, and then you must instantly come and see it. They moved into 17 Bruton Street after the 12th of April 1921. It was around this time that Elizabeth struck up a closer friendship with Prince Albert George, Duke of York. She left from the house on her way to Westminster Abbey on her wedding day, the 26th of April 1923. George, Duke of York, and Elizabeth Bowes-Lyons Maid had an epileptic son in 1924, which they left to die on the hospital gurney. 3 years later, the Duke and Duchess of York to 17 Bruton Street for a few months for the birth of their first child. This was actually the second child, in which George, Duke of York, was removed from the gene pool and replaced by Winston Churchill. Elizabeth Bowes-Lyons Maid and Winston Churchill. The artificial insemination biological parents of Queen Elizabeth II. The window of a few months was after the 26th of April 1926 to before the 28th of October 1926, being a 5-month window. They had previously lived in Chesterfield House and Curzon House in Mayfair. This is how it came to be that the future Queen Elizabeth was born at 17 Bruton on 2:40 a.m. the 21st of April 1926, but actually born at number 5. Following tradition, Home Secretary William Joynson Hicks was present in the house to act as a witness. William Joynson Hicks was Home Secretary 7 November 1924 to the 5th of June 1929, which is after the 1924 firstborn epileptic son was left to die on the hospital gurney. Home Secretary Theresa May, 2010 to 2016, purposefully went on holiday to Europe for a week and failed to witness the birth of Prince George on the 22nd of July 2013. This is a capital offence, confirming illegitimacy, for which Theresa May was awarded Prime Ministership on the 13th of July 2016 and is delaying enacting Brexit. The deadline is the 31st of March 2017, after which the European Union Army is allowed to invade.
The European Army is allowed to invade the United Kingdom from the 31st of March 2017. This scenario was set up at this time to reveal Elizabeth II as a fake queen, flatly royal, incapable of claiming the United Kingdom as a sovereign nation, because Elizabeth has never been the sovereign. This scenario is entirely based on the British royal family being continually illegitimate at each generation, including Prince William and Prince George. Brexit was designed to confirm the British royal family's illegitimacy to you in March 2017, syncing with this documentary.
Both King George V and Queen Mary visited the home to see the new baby, and massive crowds gathered outside at the house to witness it all. Despite that, no photos of the King and Queen's arrival can be found. They switched things up for Princess Margaret to obscure Winston Churchill as the siring male of both daughters. the 29th of May 1926 at the private chapel in Buckingham Palace. At the time, the Elizabeths were still living on 5 Bruton Street. Here's an excerpt of another letter from 1926, which goes to show how much the Duke and Duchess of York appreciated being able to stay and live at the house. The 28th of October 1926 to Lady Strathmore, Sandringham, Norfolk. Earl and Countess of Strathmore staying in Sandringham. My darling mother, we leave here tomorrow and return to B. Bruton Street. I honestly don't know what we would have done without it. Later, the Duke and Duchess of York took a London house at 145 Piccadilly. They moved in on an undisclosed date. The house, 17 Bruton Street, has been demolished. We haven't unearthed when this happened. This plaque was added as part of the Queen's Diamond Jubilee celebrations in 2012. It is in all caps, which is ancient Latin, in which case it makes no sense. All caps ancient Latin is used to tell a lie and hide the truth. On this site at 17 Bruton Street stood the townhouse of the Earl of Strathmore and Kinghorn, where Elizabeth Alexandra Mary Windsor, later to become Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, was born on the 21st of April 1926. This is ancient Latin gobbledygook and entirely meaningless. There is no space between the Windsor. Later, the R and L meaning royal lie. By 2012 this site was recognized as a lie. Number 17. No, number 5. The BBC was created at the same time Elizabeth was born on the 21st of April 1926 to promote the fake princess. The BBC sex story was set in stone. The BBC's call sign was 2LO, as in too low. The BBC sex story was set in stone, set in stone, set in stone, set in stone, set in stone. Set in stone, set in stone, set in stone, set in stone, set in stone. Elizabeth II's illegitimate birth in Popular Culture and the Ambiguity of the Crown, by Joesph Gregory Hallett. Episode 2. Marks of Elizabeth II's illegitimacy, the ambiguity of the Crown.
Ambiguous means legally ambiguous. Patent ambiguity falls against the Crown. Continued ambiguity is ambiguity with purpose and intent, which is patent ambiguity. The Crown's continued patent ambiguity has purpose and intent. Crown ambiguity is not legally relied upon. When the time is right for the Crown to be exposed, continued patent Crown ambiguity exposes the Emperor with no clothes. This is known as flat lie royal. Marks of Elizabeth's illegitimacy. In 1917, the Fabergé eggs were stolen off Russian royals. The real Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon moved to France in 1921, 1922, or 1923, where she married and died in 1950. This was known to English and French high society, including Coco Chanel, who lived in Mayfair as much as Paris. On the 5th of May 1921, Coco Chanel developed Chanel No. 5, released to select clientele, countesses etc. There was no advertising and the perfume was secret. George proposed to Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon in 1921, 1922 and 1923, but married Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon's maid on the 26th of April 1923. For the Westminster wedding to George, later King George VI. Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon's maid left from number 17 Bruton Street, Mayfair, a home of Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon's parents. In 1924, George, Duke of York, and his wife, Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon's maid, gave birth to an epileptic son which they left to die on the hospital gurney. Girl, Elizabeth Alexandra Mary Mountbatten. Elizabeth II was not born at number 17 Bruton Street, but at number 5 Bruton Street, where King George V had sired a son, Anthony Blunt. Elizabeth's shifty birth was marked by ice cream in Kensington, perfume in France, and deodorant in America. George, Duke of York, became King George VI in December 1936. The real Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon married in France. She died of the same heart condition as her brother, at the same age, 50, in 1950. Elizabeth Alexandra Mary Windsor, Mountbatten, erroneously known as Queen Elizabeth II, is an illegitimate bastard, not of the royal lineage she claims. Elizabeth's fake history marked the demise of the crown and coin, turned the pound into a derogatory note, then closely employed the same people who faked the circumstances around her birth. The entire scenario of Elizabeth's birth stank from England to France and America, where it was codified by the Duke of Westminster, his partner Coco Chanel, and Fabergé Brut 33. The royal and Shakespearean plot thickens.
In early 1924, Coco Chanel was introduced to Bender, the second Duke of Westminster. 1879 to 1953, the richest man in Europe who owned 600 acres of building in London. Bender's first wife, 1901 to 1919, was the daughter of Edward VII, the teenage mistress, whose brother married Churchill's mother, but was the same age as Winston, both born 1874, all swingers. Winston Churchill had a standing invite to Chanel's soirees. Mary Patsy Cornwallis West was the matchmaker. Bender's boarding house at 2 Borden Street was Chanel's London base, 1917 to 1953, 200 yards from 17 Bruton Street. Chanel became the World War II Nazi secret agent 7124, codenamed Westminster. In 1924, the Chanel No. 5 bottle design was changed to the building plan of No. 17 Bruton Street, 200 yards away. The narrower 1932 carry bottle emulated No. 5 Bruton Street. Chanel No. 5 was first publicly marketed through the New York Times on the 16th of December 1924. The Chanel No. 5 bottle remained the same from 1924 with square faceted corners. The Chanel No. 5 stopper became thicker in the 1950s and 1970s, then reduced in 1986 to more accurately reflect the 80,000 square foot new build plan at 17 Bruton Street, Mayfair. In 1964, Fabergé marketed Brut, and in 1968, Brut 33, to confirm Brut on Street was an Illuminati secret. In 1925, a new brand of ice cream was sold, based in Kensington, called Lyon's Maid, 1925 to 1992. Lyon's Maid ice cream began in Kensington in 1925. These signs were auctioned together, bringing some royal daylight on the matter. 3 Dancing Children, or the Good Times sign, 1971 to 1992, shows George, Duke of York, George VI, dancing with Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon's maid, left with apron, and Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon, right as EBL. Elizabeth Bowe's lion's mane was extracted as one of a twin from the Emerald Isle, Green Island in 1907. Hence the 1970s good times sign. This is 1971. The 3 and 4 leaf clover represent Waterford in County Waterford, Green Paddling Pool, Southern Ireland, where Elizabeth Bowe's lion's mane was a twin, 1900 to 1907, and across the other channel, Schnell, the Irish Sea. George's Farmer Brown equals George III. The maid dancing into George is an Irish redhead. Elizabeth Bowe's Leon dancing away from George and falling backwards. Irish celebrating with dance over the 3 and 4 leaf clover, duping the UK with 3 false monarchs over 4 decades, 1936 to 1971. This was the Republic of Southern Ireland's wet dream. Hence, squaring the circle is cut in half and truncated, equals flatlie royal, flatlie royal, flatlie royal. Elizabeth Bowe's lion's mane, £1.25 alludes to 1925. Elizabeth Bowe's lion's mane. King George III's wife was half black, chocolate, hence 3 sticks of chocolate. Queen Mary is 1/4 black. George, Duke of York, George VI, was 1/8 black. 4 kings and the big new luxury taste of lion's mane equals King George I to 4th, 1714 to 1830, turned over in their graves when George VI married his fiancée's maid, a repeat of Jacob in the Bible, who married dull older Leah instead of sexy younger Rachel. Elizabeth Bowe's Liam died in 1950, hence the price, £1.50. Elizabeth Bowe's lion's mane, married in 1923, epileptic son born and died in 1924. George removed a sperm donor in July 1925. Then lion's mane ice cream in 1925, the same year. Elizabeth Bowe's lion's mane, 1907 to 2002. Elizabeth Bowe's lion's mane. Use royal daylight, 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 use royal daylight. Lion's mane, ice cream.
Lion's mane, ice cream.
Lion's mane, ice cream. Lion's mane, ice cream. When it became known George, Duke of York, had not married Elizabeth Bowe's Leon, but Elizabeth Bowe's lion's mane. Lyons Corner House is named an ice cream after the unfortunate 1923 wedding, and after their epileptic son was left to die on the hospital gurney in 1924. Lyons made ice cream went from 1925 to 1992. Lyons Corner Houses were based in Kensington. Elizabeth and the BBC were born in April 1926. The BBC accent was entirely manufactured, as was Princess Elizabeth. The BBC broadcast on 2LO, as in too low, as was Elizabeth. Too low, too low, too low, too low, too low. Lyons made ice cream van in the 1970s. Elizabeth II's illegitimate birth in Popular Culture and the Ambiguity of the Crown, by J. Gregory Hallett. Codifying then destroying Elizabeth's birthplace. Episode 3.
The official proposed birthplace of Queen Elizabeth II is number 17 Bruton Street. But this was demolished on an undisclosed date, which is very strange for the birthplace of a monarch. The site was also rebuilt on an undisclosed date. This is also very strange. The style of the new building is dreary Stalinist with no celebration, but appears to imitate two things. Chanel No. 5 and the pound sterling with silver backing, being two horizontal stripes. Stalin came to the fore the same time Elizabeth was born. Elizabeth and Stalin were third cousins. Many buildings were destroyed to order during the blitzes of World War II. 17 Bruton Street was demolished at some stage between 1940 and 1962 to remove any traces of evidence of the non-birth of Elizabeth at that location, like a letter and photographs of her birth at number 5 hidden behind the wallpaper, or in a pewter box behind the fireplace, or in an urn in an associated country estate. Their favorite excuse was to blame the destruction of the monarch's birthplace on a random bomb. But if you are going to do that, choose your bomb wisely. The Windsors did not choose their bomb wisely. In fact, they shot themselves in the foot. Demolition of 17 Bruton Street was blamed on a World War II bomb, but the closest bomb was 350 yards away. This became the site of the demise of the Pound and Crown. The building plan of 17 Bruton Street was the symbol of pound sterling, backed by silver, the metal of kings. But by 1968 to 1971, the decimal coins read Elizabeth to Greg. So from 1971, Elizabeth was no longer backed by silver, the metal of kings. Pound sterling became the pound. Elizabeth's portrait was then removed from the pound notes and replaced by Mrs. Sanderson. 17 Bruton was only marked as Elizabeth's birthplace in 2012. In the intervening period, 1926 to 2012, it was number 5, as confirmed across the English Channel by the French Chanel, who also lived 200 yards away at 2 Borden Street in Mayfair. They claimed the 1940 to 1941 high-explosive bomb was on Bruton Place, 60 to 150 yards from 17 Bruton Street, then gave the bomb's current area code as W1S, 1PY. This is Maddox Place, 350 yards away. I spy Windsor, I spy Windsor, I spy Windsor. The 1940 to 1941 bomb was not the cause of 17 Bruton Street being demolished 350 yards away on an undisclosed date. The cause was Queen Elizabeth II, not born at number 17. Elizabeth was born 100 yards away at number 5 Bruton Street. 1945 aerial photograph showing 1940 to 1941 high-explosive bomb, 350 yards away from 17 Bruton Street. Current photograph showing 1940 to 1941 high-explosive bomb, 350 yards away from 17 Bruton Street. Winston Churchill lived in various places around Bruton Street. The Duke of Westminster and Chanel lived in Borden House at 2 Borden Street, 200 yards away. It is only 100 yards from number 17 to number 5 Bruton Street, the Coach and Horses pub, above which Queen Elizabeth II was born on the 21st of April 1926. Anthony Blunt, aged 17, used this to extort Elizabeth, becoming surveyor of the King's and Queen's pictures, 1945 to 52 to 1973. Earl Strathmore agreed to the wedding at number 17, but not the birth. Elizabeth II was considered illegitimate, so born above a pub. Queen Elizabeth II's official birthplace of 17 Bruton Street was demolished on an undisclosed date, under the false reason of a high explosive bomb 350 yards away, when Elizabeth was 15 years old. On the 5th of May 1921, Coco Chanel developed Chanel No. 5, released to select clientele, countesses and similar, without advertising. In 1924, the Chanel No. 5 bottle design was changed to the building plan of No. 17 Bruton Street. It was still named No. 5, where Elizabeth was born. Chanel No. 5 was then marketed through the New York Times from the 16th of December 1924. The Chanel No. 5 bottle remained the same from 1924 with square faceted corners. The Chanel No. 5 stopper became thicker in the 1950s and 1970s, then reduced in 1986, to more accurately reflect the 80,000 square foot new build plan of 17 Bruton Street in Mayfair. 17 Bruton Street is where Elizabeth is claimed to have been born. Its all 80,000 square feet were destroyed on an unknown date between 1940 and 1962, then rebuilt 1962 to 1971. 17 Bruton Street, Mayfair, 80,000 square feet demolished and rebuilt. Queen Elizabeth II was actually born 100 yards away at number 5 Bruton Street above the Coach and Horses pub.
Chanel No. 5. This bottle was sold from the 5th of May 1921 to the 16th of December 1924 to the 1950s. This bottle was sold from the 1950s to 1970s. This bottle was sold from the 1970s to 1986 and current. Chanel No. 5. The French say it stinks that the building and bottle are the same proportion, one designed to fit inside the other, and name No. 5 Bruton Street as the birthplace of Elizabeth. Chanel No. 5 and the Pound Sterling Building. In 1964, Fabergé marketed Brut. From 1968, Fabergé marketed Brut 33 to confirm Bruton Street was an Illuminati secret and was made in a form reminiscent of No. 5 Bruton Street.
Get your Brut on.
This was subconscious register that Elizabeth Alexandra Mary Windsor was born at No. 5, illegitimate, actually Elizabeth Alexandra Mary Mountbatten, and was not highly thought of, so she was born above the pub at No. 5 Bruton Street. Fabergé then sold Brut 33 to Unilever in 1989. Brut then became only Brut 33, confirming it was part of this Illuminati program.
Coach and Horses pub, No. 5 Bruton Street. Elizabeth the Illegitimate was born here. 1964 Brut. The Coach and Horses pub. 1968 Brut 33. The Coach and Horses pub at No. 5 Bruton Street, the place of Elizabeth's birth. No. 5 Bruton Street, the Coach and Horses pub, 1968 to 1989. Chanel No. 5 Bruton Street 33, Illuminati secret. Chanel No. 5 Bruton Street hidden in plain sight since 1932. 17 Bruton Street became the site of the demise of the crown and the demise of the pound.
The building plan of 17 Bruton Street was the symbol of pound sterling backed by silver, but by 1968, the decimal coins began to read Elizabeth to Greg, 1968 to 2015. From 1971, Elizabeth was no longer backed by silver, the metal of kings. Pound sterling became the pound. Elizabeth's portrait was then removed from the pound notes and replaced with Mrs. Sanderson. 17 Bruton Street, Mayfair was only marked as Elizabeth's birthplace in 2012. In the intervening period, 1926 to 2012, it was number 5, as confirmed by the French Chanel number 5. The 1968 to 1971 Chanel stopper changeover. The 1968 to 1971 pound sterling changeover. The 1968 to 1971 changeover, removing the silver-backed sterling, leaving only the fire paper pound, with single stripe.
When number 17 Bruton Street was demolished and rebuilt, 1940 to 1970, the Chanel number 5 stopper fitted perfectly, 1950 to 1970. When the stopper is slid southwest towards Hyde Park Corner, it fits perfectly. Chanel number 5 demolishing number 17 Bruton Street. Chanel number 5 deconstructing number 17 Bruton Street. The deconstruction of Chanel number 5 emulates Queen Elizabeth II's head in 1952, wearing Granny's tiara, including pearls and earring. Tiara or crown falling off backwards at the point of disconnect. Stone. Earring. Necklace of stones. The Chanel number 5 stopper from the 1970s needed shrinking, and this was done in 1986. Number 17 Bruton Street. Chanel produced number 5, also number 22 in 1928, number 19 on the 19th of August 1971, and Chanel number 18 in 2007, but no number 17. These bottles emulate number 17 Bruton Street, 200 yards from where Coco Chanel lived on 2 Borden Street in Mayfair, London. Number 5 Bruton Street. Chanel produced number 5, also number 22 in 1928, number 19 on the 19th of August 1971, and Chanel number 18 in 2007, but no number 17. These carry bottles emulate number 5 Bruton Street, 300 yards from where Coco Chanel lived in Mayfair, London. That's the Chanel crossing for you, especially when it comes to the French and Americans exposing fraudulent British monarchy, which continued through Life magazine. Elizabeth Alexandra Mary Mountbatten was born on the 21st of April 1926. 41 days later, Norma Jean Mortensen was born on the 1st of June 1926. Elizabeth changed her name to Elizabeth Alexandra Mary Windsor and Queen Elizabeth II. Norma Jean Mortensen changed her name to Marilyn Monroe. King George VI died on the 6th of February 1952. Elizabeth pronounced herself Queen in the newspapers, then produced a proclamation stating she was not the Queen, not the Queen, not the Queen, not the Queen, not the Queen. At the same time, Marilyn Monroe was asked, "What do you wear to bed?" Marilyn replied, "Chanel number 5. This appeared 61 days after Coronation Day, with Marilyn Monroe on the cover of Life magazine on the 7th of April 1952. 4 months after Coronation Day, in October 1953, Marilyn posed nude in her bed with Chanel No. 5 on her nightstand. But the photos were never published. In April 1960, Marie Claire interviewed Marilyn Monroe where she reflected on Chanel No. 5, but it was never published. 28 months later, Marilyn Monroe died on the 4th of August 1962. At the same time, number 17 Bruton Street was demolished. In 2012, Chanel procured the April 1960 recording.
What do you wear to bed? Chanel No. 5, because it's the truth.
Forever Marilyn and number 5. The 6th of February 2012 was Elizabeth's 50th Jubilee, proclaiming she was just a moot point, hearsay and not the Queen. 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 So a plaque was placed on the wall of a rebuilt number 17 Bruton Street, claiming it was Elizabeth II's birthplace. Marilyn Monroe's contemporary was Grace Kelly, 1929 to 1982. The heroin trafficking princesses Elizabeth and Grace Kelly had a lesbian affair. Marilyn was the normal one. Elizabeth II's illegitimate birth in Popular Culture and the Ambiguity of the Crown, by J. Gregory Hallett. Fabulous Fabergé. Eggs to Brute 33. Episode 4.
Fabulous Fabergé. Secrets on the outside, with a surprise inside. Especially when it comes to Russians and Americans exposing fraudulent British monarchy, which continued through Fabergé Brute 33. Fabergé egg can be Cockney rhyming slang for Greg. Fabergé made the Fabergé egg, Greg, which is associated with Russian royalty. Fabergé were based in St. Petersburg, and in 1885 made goldsmith by special appointments to the imperial crown. Fabergé made 50 imperial eggs, 1885 to 1916, and 155,000 pieces. Fabergé knew the inner secrets of the royal families and codified these on the exterior, including a surprise inside. 2 of these secrets were: the future Tsar Alexander III of Russia sired King George V of the United Kingdom, then killed his elder royal runt brother, Grand Duke Nicholas Nixa. Then married Nixa's fiancée, Maria Dagmar Fyodorovna, producing Tsar Nicholas II, half-brother and first cousin with George V. In Russia, Easter is the time for gifts, not Christmas. Fabergé eggs were the choice of Easter gift from the Tsar to his wife from 1885 to 1917. The first Romanov imperial Fabergé Easter egg was a simple egg, white with a gold yolk inside, and a golden hen inside that. This was called the hen egg. Each year Tsar Alexander III, ruled 1881 to 94, commissioned another egg for Maria Fyodorovna. Some are lost today, some are lost today, some are lost today, but those that remain reveal how Fabergé developed a close relationship with the Empress. The world's most beautiful eggs. The genus of cow Fabergé. BBC 4, 25th of June 2013. Their son, Tsar Nicholas II, ruled 1894 to 1917, purchased Fabergé eggs for his wife, Alexandra Fyodorovna, who died in 1928, not 1918. The last Fabergé Imperial Romanov egg was gifted at Easter, on the 23rd of April 1916, a steel military egg commemorating Tsar Nicholas II as Commander-in-Chief. Tsar Nicholas II then abdicated on the 15th of March 1917. Taking more than a year to make, the 1917 Fabergé Romanov Imperial egg was complete, awaiting final inspection for approval, and due to be gifted a month later on the 15th of April 1917. Easter. In October 1917, Fabergé was taken over by the Communists as the Committee of the Employees of the Company K. Fabergé. In October 1918, the House of Fabergé was nationalized and production ceased. Carl Fabergé escaped disguised as a member of the British legation on the last train to leave for the West. All the Fabergé stock was then locked away in the Kremlin armory with the crown jewels in October 1918. In the first 8 years, 1917 to 25, the Communists devalued the ruble to 150 million, and in 1927, a starved Stalin was required to sell the Romanov treasures to the West. The original 1885 Fabergé hen egg was sold at Christie's in London for £85 in 1934, £4,000 at 2004 value. Publisher Malcolm Forbes collected 9 Fabergé Romanov Imperial Easter eggs, which his son sold in 2004 for £55 million. The Shin or Forbidden Secret ran from 1812 to 2012. The Gallic cockerel represents France as a nation. The Rothschild egg affirms Rothschild overthrew the French monarchy, bred the first homing pigeons to fly from Waterloo to Bank in London, organized Napoleon to lose the Battle of Waterloo in 1815, then bankrupted the British royal family, thus beginning the 1818 Rothschild British Royal Breeding Program. Tick-tock, 352 or 1017. This 1902 Fabergé Rothschild egg sold at Christie's in London for £9 million in 2007. In 2008 an American hedge fund revived Fabergé, producing 100 pieces selling for £24,000 to £4.2 million. Fabergé continued with the secrets of the royal families in 1964, with Brute as an outward codification of Bruton Street, and Brute 33 in 1968, confirming Bruton Street was an Illuminati secret. Russian intelligence historians turned up in Auckland, New Zealand, choosing to brief Gregory Hallett on the escape of the Romanovs. Meetings were held in the Auckland Public Library, amongst the homeless, with all dressed down for the treff. The essential information was then delivered to Gregory Hallett 500 meters up Queen Street, just above the town hall. On one occasion books were presented. Almost immediately Gregory Hallett delivered the essential core of the Romanov family survival story to the Russian historians, without reading the books, but perusing them for images, more or less to check the Russians were legitimate. These Russian intelligence historical caretakers were somewhat elated and perplexed that Gregory Hallett had prior knowledge of the Romanov escape from the inside out, heading to Central Russia, Central Ireland, and to Spain. Dutch intelligence then arrived into New Zealand to report what each intelligence agency thought of Greg Hallett and company. The North Shore Sunday Market was used for end-of-week intelligence briefings. Here, via their sons, presidents of the Law Society and judges confirmed which lawyers were involved in criminal activity. Missing Romanov Fabergé eggs were offered up to Gregory Hallett in January 2011 to be picked up from this Sunday market. But his Mercedes had been electro-busted and London DIC types got there first. It was a van with Dutch signage that electro-busted the Mercedes, working on the orders of a New Zealand internal affairs agent whose estranged wife was Princess Diana's nanny to Prince William and Harry. At the time Lady Diana was taken out of the picture in 1997. Perhaps out of sympathy, Dutch began funding Gregory Hallett to write a more important story. The escape of the British royal family out of the United Kingdom and into Portugal. With mounting pressure from all angles and all the security focused inward, Greg Hallett was saved by another form of egg, and escaped from New Zealand on the 9th of September 2011 using the opening of the Rugby World Cup as cover. We both won. The Russian intelligence historical caretakers left 2 weeks later, without the Romanov family escaped to Spain and Ireland written up. London grabbing the Romanov eggs, without Fabergé or Brute funding Joesph Gregory Hallett, without the royal secrets exposed, but with the internal surprise kept in codification. A la Captain Cody. All of this is called getting rolled. It is a counterintelligence underhand method of announcing a roll call. It is a verification of what is to come, according to the predictions, which are always supported by a past. 3 years after the birth of Elizabeth Alexandra Mary Mountbatten, Vice Admiral Sir Theodore John Hallett was appointed aide-de-camp to King George V, 1929–32, and made Companion of the Order of Bath in 1931.
Elizabeth II's illegitimate birth in Popular Culture and the Ambiguity of the Crown, by J. Gregory Hallett. Stampton Point for the New King. Episode 5. J. Lyons 2D postage stamp refers to Lyons-made ice cream. Elizabeth Bowes Lyons-made and Elizabeth II's illegitimacy, symmetrically 1925 to 1952. In 1968, the first new decimal coin, the 5p, reads
Elizabeth 2D Gregg 1968. Brute 33 began in 1968.
The first of the new decimal coins was the 5p in 1968. It reads
Elizabeth 2D Gregg 1968.
This indicates that by 1968, Elizabeth was forward dispensing FD, the crown to Greg.
Brute changed to Brute 33 in 1968. 21 years later, the forbidden secret, the Berlin Wall, came down in 1989. Brute was sold to Unilever in 1989 and permanently became Brute 33, confirming all were Illuminati. 5 Bruton Street. 17 Bruton Street. Elizabeth Bowes Lyons-made. Lyons-made ice cream. Queen Elizabeth II's illegitimacy. Chanel No. 5. Brute 33. Decimal currency. Forward discernment of Greg Hallett. Fall down of the Berlin Wall. Fabergé delivered. FD. Eggs to Greg.
All of this means that Elizabeth is not the head of the crown, but rather head of
Silent weapons for quiet wars.
that took over the crown in 1953 and declared war on everybody.
Throughout all my life and with all my heart, I have in sincerity
All of this means that Elizabeth is not the head of the crown, but rather head of
Silent weapons for quiet wars
that took over the crown in 1953 and declared war on everybody.
I have in sincerity
The crown has been vacant from 1953 to 2016, and FD. Ford dispensed down Fabergé delivered to Greg Hallett as decimal coins 1968 to 2015-16, stating Elizabeth II to Greg. Elizabeth spells Halet, rendering the surname Hallett, and Ibez, rendering ibis. The king is delivered by the 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 ibis.
The agent of change is in your pocket, 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 in your pocket.
Elizabeth Coronation Day 1952 54 2 and 6 stamp. Brute 1964 Greg Hallett 2 years old. Brute 33 1968 Greg Hallett 6 years old. 1964 and 1968 equals Greg Hallett is 2 and 6. The 1953-54 2D to 260 or 2.5D links with Fabergé's Brute, Bruton Street, Fabergé Egg, Greg, and George V, but not a 3D Queen Elizabeth until 8/8/1967, a month after Greg Hallett met George VI's natural son in New Zealand, King George VII. Sixpence stamp. Sixpence postage revenue. English rose depicted as a weed. Scottish thistle, weed. Three-leaf clover, Ireland. Daffodil, ice cream cornet, Wales. Two dandelions, weeds, Irish maid on the left and Scottish Elizabeth Bosley on the right posing as English roses. Two dandelion weeds equals the two illegitimate princesses, Elizabeth and Margaret, conceived by Lion's maid, twice. Princess Elizabeth is known as Lilibet the maid, Lilibet the born, Elizabeth the maid, and Lilibet the daughter of the maid. The Hidden King of England, Unveiling the Rose, pages 642 and 585. Elizabeth is not the granddaughter of King George V. George V's mother was Alexandra, wife of Edward VII, who was the non-siring house father to George V. Edward VII sired Winston Churchill as an illegitimate. Winston Churchill was the sperm donor father of Elizabeth. George VI was the house father of Queen Elizabeth II. So, Elizabeth was the illegitimate daughter of Winston Churchill, who was the illegitimate son of Edward VII, an illegitimate, who was the non-siring house father of George V. Queen Elizabeth II is the granddaughter of Edward VII, who was the house father of a house grandfather, George V, affirming Elizabeth is her own second cousin, 4 times removed, and a triple bastard, as well as fourth cousin, 4 times removed, with her house grandfather King George V.
Queen Elizabeth II is fourth cousin 4 times removed from her house-grandfather King George V.
If Queen Elizabeth II is allowed to continue, we are going to get something really bizarre.
More of the same. Elizabeth, to be or not to be. Elizabeth R. Of ambiguous name, of ambiguous parentage, of ambiguous birth location, of ambiguous style and titles.
Who has given birth to 4 children, of uncertain name, of uncertain parentage, of uncertain style and titles, of uncertain reputation, bisexual pedophiles.
Who have sired illegitimate children, of hidden names, of hidden parentage, of hidden style and titles, are one and all flat thy royal.
Elizabeth to be or not to be are, where R equals been on a royal visit and R dot equals royal, and thus continues a long tradition of illegitimate births, such that if one ever raised the question of royal blood, the answer, flat lie royal, comes first and foremost, followed by ambiguous style and titles. This proof is confirmed hidden in plain sight as predicted and bound by the tradition received, with Joesph Gregory Hallett holding the letters patent royal prerogative customary title to the throne and crown of the United Kingdom, with royal blood thumbprint impressed on it, 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 with royal blood thumbprint impressed on it. There is to be no alteration on proportion. All 6 years apart, Joesph Gregory Hallett was given the
coat of arms of New Zealand in 1962, the United Kingdom 5-pence decimal coin in 1968, the royal style and titles of New Zealand and of Grenada on the same day in 1974, the 25p coin in 1980, known as the Crown, and 56 billion United Kingdom decimal coins 1968 to 2015, 16. These were all predictions of the almost prior design, held in the tradition received, and made physical as royal marks, each signed off by Queen Elizabeth II. These predictions were both gifts and labours, challenges requiring fulfilment, emerging only once realised. Thereafter these royal marks required recognition as royal marks fulfilled. Queen Elizabeth II has only worn the crown and sat on the throne while she waited for the predictions she signed off as royal marks to be fulfilled. This came about in conjunction with the public realization of the complete, utter and total illegitimacy of the incumbent flat-lie royal family of the United Kingdom. The true purpose of the coats of arms, royal style and titles, and royal minted coins is to mark the journey of the new true king. Elizabeth II's illegitimate birth in popular culture and the ambiguity of the crown, by J. Gregory Hallett. King George VI Confesses. Episode 6.
This story of the illegitimate birth and birthing of Elizabeth II is supported by popular culture, from ice creams to Chanel No. 5 and Fabergé perfumes to the pound sterling denigrated to the pound, without the silver backing, without the metal of kings, by the coins of the United Kingdom for 47 years, and by the return of the Fabergé eggs to Greg. But it is also supported by the 1953 book and 1976 film To the Devil, a Daughter, and the 2005-2006 film V for Vendetta, which omits CII, Elizabeth II, and names J.G.H. King.
Coco Chanel dated Bender, 2nd Duke of Westminster from 1923-25 to 1935. They remained friends to his death on the 19th of July 1953. Chanel stayed in his 2 Borden Street house, 1917 to 1953 when in London, which was often. Bender, 2nd Duke of Westminster's first wife, 1901 to 1919, was Constance Edwina Sheila Cornwallis West, 1875 to 1970. 3 children, amicable separation in 1914 and divorce in 1919. Sheila was the daughter of King Edward VII's teenage lover, Mary Patsy Cornwallis West, whose replacement was Jenny Jerome, resulting in the illegitimate birth of Winston Churchill, who sired Queen Elizabeth II, also known as the Maid, meaning illegitimate.
Dennis Wheatley, 1897 to 1977, inherited Wheatley and Son on South Audley Street, Mayfair grocers and wine retailers, 500 yards from number 17 Bruton Street, 400 yards from Chanel at 2 Borden Street, and 150 yards from Winston Churchill. From 1923, Dennis's new stepfather, Sir Lewis Newton, became Lord Mayor of London in 1923, at which time Dennis Wheatley, 26, personally supplied wines for the King of Romania to entertain King George V. Dennis Wheatley took over Wheatley and Son in 1927. Wheatley specialized in black magic historical thrillers, and first published 3 Inquisitive People, and The Forbidden Territory, 1933, which featured Those Modern Musketeers. Wheatley then amassed a modern-day black magic library and wrote V for Vengeance, 1942, and Vendetta in Spain, August 1961, a well-researched study into anarchism, which he dedicated to the 85-year-old Sheila Cornwallis West. Wheatley also wrote The Man Who Killed the King, History Espionage, October 1951, and To the Devil, a Daughter, Occult, January 1953, between Elizabeth as Regent and Coronation Day on the 2nd of June 1953. Wheatley's main characters support royalty, empire, and the class system. His historical analysis is well informed and affected by politics, as are his titles. Princess Elizabeth was secretly engaged, then officially engaged on the 9th of July 1947. Wheatley then penned a letter to posterity and hid it in an urn at his country home. Discovered earlier than desired, in 1969, Wheatley predicted the socialist reforms introduced by the post-war government would inevitably result in the abolition of the monarchy, national bankruptcy, and a pampered, lazy working class. Ian Fleming was the first commander of Operation James Bond. Wheatley's Gregory Sallust series was one of the main inspirations for Ian Fleming's James Bond stories. Gregory Sallust is homophonous with Gregory Hallett, the common letters spelling Gregory tall, with Susset remaining, which sounds like Susset. Gregory Hallett wrote a book with the second commander of Operation James Bond, John Ainsworth Davis, who had been one of Princess Elizabeth's childhood dancing partners. All of this is predictive coincidence, a continuation from number 17 and number 5 Bruton Street, number 2 Borden Street, Chanel, Duke of Westminster, Sheila Cornwallis West, Wheatley's V for Vengeance, 1942, and Vendetta in Spain, August 1961. Gregory Salas to James Bond to Gregory Hallett, born September 1961, to Churchill and to the film V for Vendetta, 2005.
In the 1976 film of Wheatley's 1953, To the Devil, Ad Orta, John Verney means John the Verifier, and refers to Dennis Wheatley. Father Michael Rayner is homophonous, with Rain her meaning Hurain. Catherine Beddoes equals Bedsow meaning breeding pig D. Henry Beddoes is the only one with Rain on his jacket. Henry is King George VI, portrayed as Catherine's useless father. Nastasia Kinski, born in 1961, then aged 15, plays Catherine, the occult princess to be queen, who is 17 turning 18, the age at which kingship selection is made. Catherine Beddoes is raised in an isolated convent. The nun announces Catherine's departure from an eerie cupboard door sliding both ways. Catherine then leaves the isolated island convent in Bavaria to arrive in London as the occult princess to be queen when she turns 18 in the next weeks. 17 to 18 is the age when royalty is revealed. In the first 10 minutes, John Verney leaves the British Museum Library Reference Division and travels to the Royal Piccadilly Gallery on Cork Street, West End, and is established as the real-life film author Dennis Wheatley. To the Devil, Ad Orta, this knowledge is by invitation only. George VI would do things like this, stand outside in the rain and wait to be let in, then help himself to a drink. Henry Beddoes is the only character with Rain on his jacket, and identifies himself as King George VI, reigning 1936 to 52. Henry Beddoes is Catherine's useless father. King George VI is Elizabeth's useless father. Henry Beddoes, King George VI, stands outside the Royal Piccadilly Gallery on Cork Street, attracting the attention of John Verney's MI5-MI6 controller, who runs the gallery. The Piccadilly Gallery refers to Wheatley and Son wine retailers. They are half a mile apart, and one has to walk along Bruton Street and past Borden House to get there. The paintings and book are launched simultaneously. Henry Beddoes meets with Verney's MI5-MI6 controller in front of a painting of a forked family tree, showing the royal main trunk line has split, with Elizabeth I in the foreground. Then points to a beheaded King Charles I, complete with King Charles' spaniel dog Beau, which is also a reference to Beau's Leon. The royal Shakespearean plot thickens with honourable treason. Henry, George VI, then meets with John Verney, Wheatley, his wine supplier. George VI then hands Wheatley documents and photographs confirming the fork in the royal family tree. This was a brave and selfless act for a king, circa the 6th of September 1950. It actually showed integrity, but may have been done out of stupidity. 17 means Portugal. George VI died 17 months later, marking Portugal. The photograph is a lookalike of the real Queen of the United Kingdom. At the time, Olga Maria had just turned 20, in Portugal. An Elizabeth 24 look-alike would never pass the censors. The occult material happened to Elizabeth in England, not to Olga Maria in Portugal. To the Devil, at Altar, 10 minutes into the film. Female MI5 asset.
It all sounds quite mad.
John Verney's MI5 MI6 agent.
I think you'd be a fool to do it.
John Verney.
That might be. Then again, it might be interesting and possibly lucrative. Now don't worry, you'll get your 10%.
King George VI confessed to Dennis Wheatley. Sheila Cornwallis West also confessed to Dennis Wheatley. Wheatley could not dedicate to the Devil a altar to King George VI in 1953, as it would name George's house daughter Elizabeth as an illegitimate occulted pretender, and would be construed as causing George's death 11 months earlier. So instead Wheatley dedicated Vendetta in Spain to Sheila Cornwallis West in 1961. Sheila Cornwallis West lived at 2 Borden Street, 1901 to 1914. The documents and photographs showing the fork in the royal family tree is confirmed by the earlier scenes. The true royals are across water, on an isolated island of the House of Astereth, Esther, in the east, with King George VI's son in the North Island of New Zealand in the south, the United Kingdom in the west, and Joesph Gregory Hallett from the south, accessing through the North Gate. Benjamin equals people from the south, accessed through the North Gate. Benjamin equals currency, which equals crown. There are 3 Benjamin gates in the UK personal union. The South Island and North Island of New Zealand, Southern Ireland and Northern Ireland, and Suffolk and Norfolk, being East Anglia in East England. The United Kingdom is in the west. The House of Astereth, Esther, Bavaria, is in the east. King George VI's son was conceived at Franz Joseph Glacier on the South Island and lived on the North Island. Joesph Gregory Hallett from the south is at the North Gate. This translates as Benjamin equals currency equals crown. To the Devil, at Altar, 42 minutes, Catherine Beddoes' mother dies at birth.
Her great purpose and great destiny shall be fulfilled.
60 minutes.
His ultimate aim was to create the personification of the devil.
69 minutes, reign.
You understand, Catherine, now what your future is to be.
Catherine,
Yes, and I am content.
73 minutes.
Catherine is baptized in the blood of Astereth. For the rest of her life, she will be Astereth.
Astereth is the house of Esther, Austria and Ishtar Gate. 74 minutes.
There's a pact. They baptize a baby girl in the blood of her dead mother.
75 minutes.
Then they bring her up in seclusion like a nun.
From birth to 17.
Then they baptize her again as a devil.
Aged 18, in the blood of Elizabeth Bosleyan, who died in 1950, Elizabeth aged 24. 88 minutes. When all style and titles are lost, Mr. Rayner calls John Verney Mr. Burton.
Mr. Verney. Mr. Rayner.
Mr. Burton equals Bruton Street, where Elizabeth was born. The difference between Burton and Bruton is URRU, as in you are Queen RU. You are Queen RU. Catherine, or rather Elizabeth, then appears naked as the Empress with no clothes. 89 minutes, Rayner to Burton.
Why not enjoy Catherine?
Means why not enjoy Queen Elizabeth as Lord Porchester did in 1959, resulting in Prince Andrew in 1960, and as Lord Plunket did in 1963, resulting in Prince Edward in 1964.
Mr. Verney. Mr. Rayner. Why subject us both to all this strain and waste of energy? Why not enjoy life, Mr. Bernie? Why not enjoy Catherine?
Mr. Rayner means Lorraine. John Verney is called Mr. Burton, referring to Bruton Street.
Think of the power that Catherine will have.
Mr. Rayner is Elizabeth's occult controller in charge of her reign.
Think of the power that you could have if you obeyed her spirit. When this ceremony has been performed, I shall destroy you, John Verney. You are meddling in things beyond your knowledge.
Catherine is Elizabeth, the illegitimate daughter of Elizabeth Bowes-Lyons maiden Winston Churchill. She has no Seraph blood, but is pretended it for life via the dark occult.
I read the book of Astaroth. You just butchered Astaroth.
The circle of blood protects me, as you know.
Catherine is Elizabeth, the Empress with no clothes, requiring rescue by a commoner.
Very soon, Astaroth will live on in this child, and all will be well. Why don't you come into the circle and take her?
You really think this circle will protect you, don't you?
To the Devil, a Daughter was published in January 1953, 5 months before Coronation Day. 2 drops of blood equals 2 royal lines. In the final scene, Catherine confirms to the Devil a Daughter is about the royal bloodline. She has 2 drops of blood on her forehead, ignores the first drop of royal blood and where it came from, then smears the second drop into a bloodline across her forehead. Catherine Beddoes as Seabed South, both as Elizabeth II, have been very keen to wipe out the first drop of royal blood, the unaltered royalty, before the flat-lie royal takeover.
Throughout all my life, and with all my heart, I have in sincerity,
Elizabeth's subconscious, via reverse speech, reveals her hidden truth on Coronation Day, the 2nd of June 1953. Eight persons making it up. 8 persons making it up. 8 persons making it up.
Elizabeth II's illegitimate birth in popular culture and the ambiguity of the crown, by Joesph Gregory Hallett. V for Vengeance, V for Vendetta, and V for Victory. Episode 7. The illegitimate birth of Elizabeth II is supported by popular culture with Lyons-made ice cream, Chanel No. 5 perfume, Fabergé eggs and deodorant. The pound sterling denigrated to the pound, without silver backing, without the metal of kings, by the coins of the United Kingdom for 47 years as Elizabeth to Greg, by the return of the Fabergé eggs to Greg, the 1953 book and 1976 film To the Devil, A Daughter, and the 2005 film V for Vendetta. The 2005 V for Vendetta continues the codification of the Mayfair wine merchant Dennis Wheatley's V for Vengeance, 1942, and Vendetta in Spain, 1961. The opening scene declares V is an Illuminati movie, then omits E2, Elizabeth II, from the royal roll call, confirms the two Jesuses for the two royal lineages. The Trinity has been contaminated. Elizabeth's bisexuality, the Cell 5 Chanel No. 5 codification, God is in the rain, rain. The St. George test by fire to challenge the British crown and throne, and after fulfilling the Tower of London prophecy, proving Trinity royalty, and ending the 200-year Shin, names J.G.H. King. Nastasia Kinski, aged 15, played a 17 and 18-year-old in 1976. 8/7 equals royal. 178 or 187 equals royal 1. In V for Vendetta, Natalie Portman is age 24 in 2005. 330 equals 33 equals Illuminati knowledge is being displayed. Channel 1 and Channel 2 equals the English Channel and Irish Sea, BBC 1 and BBC 2, Chanel No. 5 and its Illuminati allocations. V blowing up BTN equals the BBC established for Elizabeth's birth. Cell number V equals Chanel No. 5. Driving home that this is all about Queen Victoria and King George V of Hanover, their progeny, and the predicted inheritance during the tribulations and end times. Squaring the circle is the perfected message achieved. 8/7 equals royal. 178 equals royal 1. St. Mary's equals Virgin Mary equals pure Trinity equals source of legitimate royalty. The Three Lions riot at King's Hospital equals England, Scotland and Wales riot at Ireland, duping them with two fake Queen Elizabeths equals putrid tainting of the Trinity. 80,000 dead refers to number 17 Bruton Street's 80,000 square feet site demolished, and Elizabeth II not born at number 17 Bruton Street. Cell E1 means Elizabeth I, clearly stating Elizabeth I was Queen. Cell E1 is then shown with a chalked X beneath, but washed out in bright light, so the mistakes, X, are unseen, meaning Elizabeth I achieved more good than bad. Cell 2 is shown without the E, meaning Elizabeth II never existed. The chalked X and dim light means her mistakes are prominent. Elizabeth II achieved nothing of merit, little of good, and was not queen, was not queen, was not queen, not queen, not queen. The two fish represent the two Jesuses and the two royal lineages. The interior holds Queen Elizabeth I's relics, including Queen Nefertiti bust, most given to her Bodleian Library in Oxford. For the pharaohs, rain equals rain. Chapter 21 of 33 equals a forbidden secret of the Illuminati. Surviving fire is a mark of St. George and the Dragon and qualifies one to defeat the British Crown Army. Joan of Arc defeated Britain's Crown Army and became the personification of St. George. Chapter 21 of 33 contains forbidden secrets of the Illuminati. E.V. Hammond. God is in the rain. Rain equals rain. So also God is in the rain. Fire then water, or water then fire, represents the maximum potential. God is in the rain. Rain also means one capable of making rain is capable of being king. There was no rain in Portugal for 49 days in the winter of 2011 to 2012. Then Joesph Gregory Hallett arrived into Lisbon on Leap Day 2012 and was given the sword of the Duchy of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, the true sword of the House of Windsor. Then it rained. Portugal's farmers were about to walk off their farms. Rain equals rain and the potential to be king.
Within 18 hours it's raining into the drought.
Five days later, on the 5th of March 2012, Joesph Gregory Hallett was given an envelope and letter from Queen Victoria. The letter contained invisible writing, Queen Victoria's usual black border, and her watermark dated 1850. Joesph Gregory Hallett took this letter to London for the clear full days from the 7th of April to the 7th of August 2012. It was the second most rainy April on record, and for 123 days it rained every day, except for 8 days, due to the Olympics. God is in the rain. Pharaonic kingship is in the rain, and in the United Kingdom, rain equals rain. Joesph Gregory Hallett then went to the Bank of England in Bank, London, and was immediately asked to be photographed for the Bank of England brochure. The photos were taken despite being 2 haircuts behind schedule with a straggly beard. The letter from Queen Victoria was scanned in 2013. The invisible letters were rendered royal blue to reveal assemble him claimant. Joesph Gregory Hallett then returned the letter in May 2013. It was inspected, then immediately returned to Joesph Gregory Hallett. Again, Joesph Gregory Hallett returned the letter in April 2014. It was inspected, then immediately returned to Joesph Gregory Hallett. The incumbent Flat-Eye royal family had to acknowledge Joesph Gregory Hallett's new position, so they sent Prince William to New Zealand on the 7th of April 2014 for 21 days. The 7th of April 2012 to the 7th of April 2014 is exactly 2 years. 21 days marks the Shin, or Forbidden Secret. The letters. A year and 33 days later, the 10th of May 2015, they sent Prince Harry to Stewart Island. The incumbent Flat-Eye royals are always sniffing around the true royals and Trinity royalty. Stewart Island is identifiable with Joesph Gregory Hallett, as his uncle had claimed its independence from the Crown in public ceremony on the 31st of July 1970, then issued Stewart Island passports. Red. The British Crown then sent the New Zealand Army to Stewart Island to claim it back, complete with New Zealand Army band marching up and down the beach at Half Moon Bay, while those who had organised the independence sat in their beach chairs with a beer, entertained. Independence in the old days was such fun. That was 1973, and by the end of that summer, Greg Hallett was given the royal style and titles of New Zealand on New Zealand Day. The illegitimate Prince Harry was the first of the incumbent Flat-Eye royals to set foot on Stewart Island since its independence from the Crown 44 years earlier, chosen because Harry's birthday was the same as Greg Hallett's, as ensured by Princess Diana. Stewart Island's permanent population is 369. To the Templars, this means place of full circle. Its importance is as the southernmost inhabited place in the personal union, both rendering it a Benjamin Gate. The salt flat equals the last Flat-Eye sovereigns. The bisexual woman looks like Elizabeth II, who is bisexual. Chapter 22 equals equals Marcos Manuel equals true king of the United Kingdom, whose lineage haunts Elizabeth, bereaving her rule. The Salt Flats equals the bisexual Queen Elizabeth II, who was in a flat-die royal lesbian relationship with Princess Grace Kelly of Monaco. When Princess Grace Kelly died at 9:55 p.m. GMT on the 14th of September 1982, the bisexual lover Queen Elizabeth II completely broke down. Elizabeth was sobbing all over the place. Here's why. Princess Grace Kelly had an affair with a skinny, charismatic Frenchman, 18 years her senior. Prince Rainier asked what it would take for him to leave, and Jacques Cousteau replied,
"A ship completely fitted out with underwater camera gear and an editing suite to make movies for television."
So that was done. The Salt Flats is the last flat-die sovereigns. Rainier III, Prince of Monaco, was known as Tax because he was taxing the heroin as it came through ports to Monaco. This was the Queen's heroin, meaning it was Queen Elizabeth II's heroin and no one could be charged for it. That's the rules. Prince Rainier was asked to lower his tax on the heroin, but refused, then paid for it in other ways. As it turned out, it was effectively Prince Rainier and Queen Elizabeth II who killed Grace Kelly. Elizabeth II was being reminded that she was only minding the crown, hat and throne, and fronting as the crown until the expected new true king arrived, with the required predictions fulfilled to be the king of the UK and a new age. To keep Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Rainier of Monaco in check, Elizabeth's lesbian lover and Prince Rainier's wife, Princess Grace Kelly, was given a mild stroke while driving on the 13th of September 1982, crashed down a cliff, then taken to hospital with critically damaged brain, thinking, thorax, organs, and leg kingship. This was a notice to think about the organ of your kingship, which can be broken with an accident, incident, or fickle stick. Grace Kelly was a vegetable by 7:40 p.m. CET on the 14th of September 1982, so Prince Rainier took her off life support, and she died at 10:55 p.m. CET. Monaco was in summer daylight saving time, so GMT +2. New Zealand was GMT +12, so 10 hours ahead of Monaco. Joesph Gregory Hallett turned 21 years old at 5:40 a.m. on 15th of September 1982, 7:40 p.m. CET on the 14th of September 1982 in Monaco, being exactly the same time, 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 being exactly the same time. The Templars were in charge of Grace Kelly's death and were warning Prince Rainier and Queen Elizabeth II about their heroin trafficking, their tax on it, their tenuous position in royalty, while simultaneously marking the 21st birthday of the unknown one expected to fulfill the predictions of the new age, of which there were many, with few known about, including exposing the forbidden secret before the end times, ending the Shin to mark the new age, completing the long year cycle of Ouroboros, finding, writing, publishing and naming the Holy Grail, representing the new age for a larger kingdom for longer, co-founding the Fifth Roman Empire, also known as the Holy Empire, which is entirely open-ended as to what it is about, and exposing Queen Elizabeth II as the last flat-die sovereign, while gathering material and events required to claim the crown, hat, throne and crown of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and all Ireland, and unifying Ireland at the last moment. All the stuff you can't make up. All the while being the target of the same heroine that killed Grace Kelly, the namesake, birthsake, deathsake and shinsake of Greg Hallett.
At the same time in 1982, Coca-Cola went to New Zealand and ran a competition for the Coke Drink and Wink to be shown before movies in Europe. including Monaco. Greg Hallett won the Coke drink and wink, then turned up to filming with a black eye.
All Kelly, no Grace.
The whole world is run on predictions, and entertainment is just a reminder of those predictions. Of all royalty, the name Grace Kelly is the closest to Greg Hallett. Greg Hallett's 20th birthday was marked by the conception of Prince William in 1981. Greg Hallett's 21st birthday was marked by the death of Princess Grace Kelly in 1982. Greg Hallett's 23rd birthday was marked by the birth of Prince Harry in 1984. The Knights Templar are in charge of kingship, and the Templars were in charge of Grace Kelly's death. These are mourning flowers, Elizabeth mourning the death of her lover Grace Kelly, and the Knights Templar mourning Elizabeth's fate rule. In May 2010, the Sangria looked Greg Hallett straight in the eye and said,
"You must respect the Templars."
As it turns out, the Knights Templar codification was 35 years ahead of time. By now you may be asking, why do all these royal events relate to Joesph Gregory Hallett? Does Joesph Gregory Hallett run the British royal family? Is all of this part of a long-winded public abdication of the British royal family to Joesph Gregory Hallett since 1967, 1968, 1974, 1980, 1981, 1982 and 1984? All of this is part of the electric holographic universe confirmation. ISIS. It is supporting data, the kind you can't make up, and it is well married. It is not the essential core reason for the British royal family's continued and ongoing abdications, but it is undeniable to watch, even if sometimes a little too rich. The truth is, we had to wait until the Shin was over in 2012, which placed everything in the middle of the tribulations. We also had to wait for the end times so that we could establish the new age. This came 2 years later. Now that Queen Elizabeth II's time is up, and she knew it would be March 2017, Elizabeth is funding her own challenges to the throne to muddy the waters. But her waters are already thoroughly muddied. Just look at ISIS versus ISIS. Even the filmmakers, directors and set designers knew, were told, or instructed. Queen Elizabeth II prefers to appoint someone who has trafficked her heroine as Prime Minister. It allows for the controlling element of extortion. David Cameron was a heroin trafficker in South Africa, so he qualified as Elizabeth's preferred Prime Minister on the 11th of May 2010. Greg Hallett then delivered a letter to 10 Downing Street on the 2nd of August 2010, arranging a meeting to discuss the transfer of the crown. Perfidious Cameron presented this letter to Elizabeth, who recognized its true value. Elizabeth then instructed Prime Minister Cameron to create ISIS out of Whitehall and supplied with arms as an ongoing distraction. Queen Elizabeth II and Prime Minister David Cameron were fifth cousins, interspersed with at least 7 direct line illegitimacies. David Cameron is noted for being a Prime Minister 2010 to 2016 who achieved absolutely nothing, but was always in your face making promises. David Cameron set the gold standard for achieving nothing of merit, little of good, and was not clean. The God Queen is ISIS. Elizabeth was proclaimed God Queen in the 1973 Royal Style and Titles of Australia, in the 1974 Royal Style and Titles of New Zealand, and in the 1975 Royal Style and Titles of Papua New Guinea, and nowhere else. The royal style and title phrase, God Queen, was used to define Lemuria, hidden in plain sight, yet uneasily sighted. The person who deciphered these royal codes was predicted to come from Lemuria, so Lemuria needed to be defined. With a little letter pressure applied by Joesph Gregory Hallett, Queen Elizabeth II created her obfuscating antithesis, Isis, then gained the Isis mantle, and lost the Isis mantle, removing herself as Isis of Lemuria, no longer God Queen of Australia, New Zealand and Papua New Guinea. Elizabeth shot herself in the foot, confirming herself once again as the Queen of ever-decreasing realms.
What a gaffe, Elizabeth! What a gaffe!
This is all part of Isis, the electric holographic universe that confirms the predictions of the tradition received to name the new true king. Isis electric holographic universe confirms the new true king, and in these tribulations, the representative of the end times, who also represented the new age, to become king of the new age in the United Kingdom. Isis chooses the closest representative of her husband Anubis. Hence the House of Wolf is named the House of Wealth, which became the House of Guelph, the House of Wettin, then the House of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, anglicised in the UK as the House of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha in 1840, falsely usurping the House of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha in 1893, and changing its name to the House of Windsor in 1917. This was confirmed in the High Courts of New Zealand, also known as the Crown, from the 11th of May 2010, when the UK's new Prime Minister David Cameron and Prince Philip's agent in New Zealand, Peter Aldridge Williams QC, all three heroin traffickers, instructed the High Courts not to notify Joesph Gregory Hallett of the heroin exposure hearings, and to suppress Joesph Gregory Hallett's 699 pages exposing the Royal, Crown and Courts heroin trafficking ring from January 2007, replacing it with one page written by their secretary. Non-notification of a respondent to a hearing holds a penalty of $10,000 per day. As of the 27th of May 2010, the High Court of New Zealand is due to pay Joesph Gregory Hallett $25 million, as at the 31st of March 2017.
You can judge a person by the size of their enemies. By the size of their enemies. By the size of their enemies. What a gaffe, Elizabeth! What a gaffe!
Elizabeth II's illegitimate birth in popular culture and the ambiguity of the crown, by J. Gregory Hallett. V for Vengeance, V for Vendetta and V for Victory continues with Episode 8.
V for Vendetta continues to codify the BBC and Bruton Street, hiding an illegitimate bisexual Queen Elizabeth, contaminating the Trinity. The Flatlie Royals as anarchy monarchy. Elizabeth's entire history and symbolism blown up and destroyed, ending Queen Elizabeth II's Flatlie Royal Courts of Injustice, proving Trinity royalty and ending the 200-year shin, discovering the Trinity and scales of judgment, confirming the two Jesuses for the two royal lineages, Knights Templar wavering, Elizabeth replacement in the wings. Empress Victoria rendered Prince Marcos Manuel king across Blackfriars Bridge, later regicided by Edward VII. Introducing the Victorian Tower of London predictions, and naming JGH King.
The Flatlie Royals used poison salt to murder Prince Marcos Manuel, King John II of the United Kingdom on the 1st of April 1910. This was regicide and Edward VII was killed for it 5 weeks later. Chapter 22 of 33, The Illuminati were aware of Prince Marcos Manuel and marked him with royal curtains having 7 or 8 folds.
Murder, 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 murder.
27 dead. The 19th of September. High Chancellor. The Templars, 9 plus 9 plus 9 equals 27, need to observe the 19th of September 1812 200-year Shin, ended by the Lord Chancellor in 2012, Joesph Gregory Hallett, after which the Flat-Eye Royals are out. The 2nd of October, new evidence found equals 2 royal lineages. Octagon equals royal grave. St. Mary's virus, the 2nd of October, linked to terrorist v. activity reports from Buckinghamshire. St. Mary equals MR-EE equals beloved equals Isis, Egyptian Trinity goddess. St. Mary's virus is to tell the truth, have the truth exposed, and live the truth, including a true Trinity representative on the throne, which is what the 200-year Shin is about, 1812 to 2012. Rain equals rain. Rain on umbrellas equals the Duke of Wellington, godfather to Prince Marcos Manuel, King of the United Kingdom 1869 to 1910, and this kingship line is about to be named as GHIJK equals JGHKI equals JGHKIHG equals JGH King equals Joesph Gregory Hallett King. Detention facility equals the eye of a needle one has to slip through. X-file not found. X-file not found. X-file not found means they never really know who the Trinity is. XXX equals discovering the Trinity in scales of judgment. The Old Bailey explodes, demolished at midnight on the 4th of November, 11 minutes into the V film. The old female Crown representative is done away with.
It is to Madame Justice that I dedicate this concerto, in honor of the holiday she seems to have taken from these parts, and in recognition of the impostor that stands in her stead.
Tchaikovsky's 1812 overture is played to acknowledge the 1812 Shin. The author of the Shin, Mayer Amschel Rothschild, died on the 19th of September 1812. Did Rothschild purchase the 1812 overture naming rights in 1880? (11 equals M), so this bonfire V at 11 minutes is Victoria and King George V of Hanover sending a posthumous message to their son Prince Marcos Manuel, King John II of England, protesting the impostor Queen Elizabeth II. The 1812 overture is now the theme tune to the 1812 Shin. The Forbidden Secret has played out its 200 years to 2012. The impostor Queen Elizabeth II has been exposed as the Empress with no clothes. Allowing the person predicted to take the throne as the true king.
Dear Inspector, For royalty of the Trinity. I understand you are looking for me, Joesph Gregory Hallett and the Trinity. I can only assume this means that you are ready for the truth about the royal family and the Trinity. If so, return this email and I will send contact details. This actually happened in 2010. WR equals Windsor Royal, or Wetton Royal, the movie says William Rookwood. Inspector Finch equals a little bird told me. William Rookwood. Legend has it that when the Rooks would leave the Tower of London, the royal family falls, represented by William Rookwood dressed as a blind man. This is blind Prince George of Cumberland, who became blind King George V of Hanover, a WR Wetton Royal, who appears to be pulling all the strings, such that his son, Marcos, became King of the United Kingdom, 1869 to 1910. The Illuminati is willing for the truth to be revealed, as of 2005. An email was returned, and contact details were sent in early 2010. Lyons Historical Shop front display featuring the maid. William Rookwood equals WR equals Windsor Royal or Wetton Royal. Welf Wolf, who is blind Prince George, King George V of Hanover, married to Queen Victoria, codified as the Virgin Mary. English Rose equals Queen Victoria. Man in a hat holds a fiddlestick, representing the royal line has been fiddled. Blind Prince George, King George V of Hanover. It's all a fiddle. Fiddlestick. Elizabeth. Margaret or Grace. From Lions made fiddlesticks in the royal family to V for Victory, conducted by blind King George V of Hanover, in personal union with the United Kingdom, and its king, 1714 to 1837, awaiting the Rookwood, would leave the Tower of London. J. Lyons and Company Fiddler. V for Victoria, Victory, Vengeance, Vendetta and the Fifth. Blind King George V of Hanover.
Three Waters Treatment and Supply Complex. Three Waters contaminated. The Trinity has been contaminated. This means the incumbent royals are contaminated, confirming they are flatline royals. Salt Flats. Even the television and news station BTN is an abbreviation of Bruton Street.
And TN means Trinity. The Virgin Mary, Isis, looks on as the 1925 Lyons lesbian is repeated 80 years later with a replica 2005 lesbian reporting the Three Waters Trinity has been contaminated by fake royals. Both wear a pearl necklace. The Virgin Mary oversees the Three Waters.
Templars are supposed to be in charge of deciding kingship, but are portrayed as dunces for resisting recognizing the true royal family and royal trinity, all the while clutching to the incumbent flatline royalty that doesn't work. Templar dunce cap. Fabian Bible.
Unity through faith, strength through unity, 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 unity through faith, strength through unity.
In an imagined sequence, the lead female is out of time and place. This is Elizabeth II as a commoner, no role, awaiting decrowning. The male reflected in the mirror is in the same current time, but in another place. The replacement waiting in the wings.
The protesting masses walk across Blackfriars Bridge, which Queen Victoria opened the same day she made her son Prince Marcos Manuel, King John II of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and all Ireland on the 6th of October 1869. The protesting masses then convene at Charing Cross, Trafalgar Square, a traditional announcing place for a new king. V for Vendetta was released in 2005 and blows up Big Ben. 7 years later, Ben was renamed Elizabeth Tower in June 2012. 10 months later, Joesph Gregory Hallett was elevated above Elizabeth. From the release of this documentary in March 2017 to 2020, Elizabeth Tower is being renovated, explosives planted within. Various royal palaces were touted for Elizabeth to be banned from, including Buckingham Palace and Balmoral Castle. Then various royal public properties were considered for terrorist demolition. The Flatline Royals then decided their cheapest option was to rename a public building, Elizabeth Tower, then publicly destroy it at no cost to themselves. So in 2012, Big Ben was renamed Elizabeth Tower, to be broken down during renovation, embedded with explosives, unfinished during Elizabeth's lifetime, then posthumously blown up to engineer unquestioning sympathy towards the Flatline Royal Elizabeth. This was the most public, least disruptive solution that bears absolutely no cost to the royals. A false flag to raise the illegitimate Flatline Royal flag for another generation of anarchy monarchy.
The Vendetta, who died a martyr's death, real or imagined, turned up alive for the fireworks that ended Westminster Palace and Big Ben, now Elizabeth Tower. This refers to the tribulation's end times Bible passage, 1 Thessalonians 4:16, and the dead in Christ shall rise first, meaning the return of the saints and apostles.
V for Vendetta is a roll call.
V for Vendetta and V for Victory for King George V of Hanover, Queen Victoria, and their son, Prince Marcos Manuel, who became King John II of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and all Ireland, 1869 to 1910.
Elizabeth II's illegitimate birth in Popular Culture and the Ambiguity of the Crown, by J. Gregory Hallett. The Tower of London prediction fulfilled. Episode 9.
Dr. Geoffrey Parnell, official Tower of London historian, 1974 to 1996, cites the Victorian legend. If the Tower of London ravens are lost or fly away, the crown will fall, and Britain with it. The Tower of London was blitzed in October 1940. The North Bastion and other buildings were completely destroyed, and the crown jewels flew the coop. The crown was removed from the tower. In chess, this means the crown was toppled by the rook, also known as the tower. Dr. Geoffrey Parnell cites the Tower Raven post-World War II records. There are none left. Churchill, being the siring father of Princess Elizabeth, decided there was one raven left, although they exist in pairs, so brought in more, enlisting the new Tower Ravens as soldiers with attestation cards, to be dismissed for conduct unbecoming a tower raven. Yeoman warders then clipped one wing, so the raven could only fly short distances, shot all the crows around the tower for decades, began a captive breeding program in 1987, and kept the tower ravens indoors for the 2006 bird flu. Post-World War II, the tower ravens became captive birds in a cage breeding program, with all predators killed. The tower ravens were now a mirror of the royal family breeding program. But two caged birds flew the coop in 1981. Princess Diana and the raven Grog. In 1981, Grog the raven decided to leave the surroundings of the tower for those of a pub. After 21 years of faithful service to the crown, Raven Grog was last seen outside an East End pub. 21 years codifies the forbidden secret in public record. Grog, 1960 to 1981, ongoing, and Greg, 1961 to 1981, ongoing. Grog the Raven and Greg Hallett were both conceived in 1960. Then Grog became Greg's nickname. Princess Diana conceived Prince William, illegitimate, with King Juan Carlos on the 15th of September 1981, on the 20th birthday of Greg Hallett. This was marked by the raven Grog leaving the Tower of London, fulfilling the Victorian prophecy: if the Tower of London ravens fly away, the crown will fall. Princess Diana confirmed her intentions by giving birth to Prince Harry on the 15th of September 1984, Greg Hallett's 23rd birthday. Diana spent her school days on Greg Hallett's ancestral lands at London by Sea, East Brighton, and was born 77 days before Greg Hallett, whose 1978 schoolboy nickname was Grog, the same as the tower raven that flew the coop in 1981. Queen Elizabeth was then required to abdicate to Greg Hallett when Prince William was 33 days gestated. Queen Elizabeth II did this at 1:30 p.m. on Friday the 16th of October 1981, on Wellesley Street in Auckland City, on the North Island of New Zealand. Field Marshal Arthur Wellesley became the first Duke of Wellington. Arthur Wellesley, 1st Duke of Wellington, was offered the crown of the United Kingdom, which he courteously forsake. Wellesley was later made godfather to Prince Mark of Manor, who became King John II of the United Kingdom in 1869, the same time the British Acclimatisation Society introduced the rook to New Zealand, 1862 to 1874. In chess, the rook is the tower. The informal and old-fashioned term for rook is castle. The rook, especially the young, are the most similar corvid to the raven. These New Zealand rooks, tower ravens or castles, peckered around Greg Hallett's gaffs, 1960 to 1988. Greg Grog Hallett then left New Zealand in 1988, and went straight to the Tower of London, more or less. Ravens and rooks are remarkably similar, both tower birds of the castle, both psychic birds used for kingship prediction. Corvids have been widely reported to hold funerals, in which they mourn and then cluster around a dead bird in silence. The Victorian prophecy was fulfilled. When the Tower of London ravens flew away, the crown fell, and confirmed Greg Grog Hallett with the line of King John of the United Kingdom and all Ireland. The British crown was toppled and taken by the castle tower rook in the royal chess Game of Thrones. Curious and curiouser. Greg Hallett grew up in Welsford, a very close spelling of Wellesley, 1961 to 1968. Dr. Geoffrey Parnell was the official Tower of London historian, 1974 to 1996. In 1974, Greg Hallett received the royal style and titles of New Zealand. In 1978, Greg Hallett was nicknamed Grog. 2000 to 2010, Greg Hallett resided in Parnell, Auckland. The truth be told, Queen Victoria funded and virtually founded the British Ghost Club Society, which became the British Psychic Society, and out of this came many Victorian prophecies, including, if the Tower of London ravens are lost or fly away, the crown will fall, and Britain with it. As of October 1940, the Tower of London's North Bastion and many other of its buildings were totally destroyed, such that they had to be demolished, the crown jewels removed, and all Tower ravens flew the coop. Winston Churchill lied about the Tower ravens to put his illegitimate daughter Elizabeth on the throne, who just happened to be raised under George VI in the royal household. With an IQ of 67, George married Elizabeth Bowe's landsmaid, and had difficulty remembering his wedding night, when his new, commoner Irish Scot wife faked wedding night whooping cough, and Elizabeth was not his own. With the theft of the coronation stone out of the unlocked Westminster Abbey at 4 a.m. on Christmas Day 1950, King George VI was bright enough to recognize this as an ominous omen for the flatlie royal house of Windsor, confirming the Victorian Tower of London raven prediction. If the Tower of London ravens are lost or fly away, the crown will fall and Britain with it. And that the missing ravens and coronation stone rendered the House of Windsor flatlie royale. In order to transfer the crown to where it was supposed to be, the legitimate King George VI died on New Zealand Day 1952. Then Winston Churchill's biological daughter, and George VI's illegitimate house daughter Elizabeth, claimed the throne in the Times newspaper. A Jesuit doctor in Rome, later Pope, then stripped Elizabeth of all her style and titles on the 26th of March 1953. The Cinderella commoner Elizabeth accepted the massive and total haircut, then happily pledged her allegiance to Rome. The crown then became silent weapons for quiet wars, which declared war on everybody, on Coronation Day 1953. Elizabeth's illegitimacy is to blame. Elizabeth tried to confess, and in fact she did. After the Times claim to the throne, Elizabeth made a proclamation that she was just a moot point hearsay and not a queen. Every Commonwealth nation then accepted Elizabeth was not the queen, and proclaimed Elizabeth is a delinquent, recorded as a Sussex Queen, of the United Kingdom Queen. This was done everywhere, except for Pakistan, which didn't quite understand English, and mistakenly declared Elizabeth Queen of the United Kingdom, then failed to declare Elizabeth Queen of Pakistan, but only from 1953 to 1956, after which Elizabeth was unqueen again, and had to wait 18 years until 1974 to become the prefix Queen of Grenada. But this was immediately rendered to Greg Hallett in New Zealand, on New Zealand Day, the 6th of February 1974. Exactly 22 years after the death of the legitimate King George VI. Elizabeth had once again declared herself
the Queen of ever-decreasing realms.
The Queen of ever-decreasing realms.
The Queen of ever-decreasing realms.
Long before this had happened, it was all predicted, the remedy laid out in plain sight in the stamps, coats of arms, coins and royal style and titles, for the transfer of the crown hat, throne, and crown of the United Kingdom. Simultaneously predicted in films and books, well before the prize was even born, but naming them to a T. The world is run on predictions, and for this to work, predictive programming was laid out in public consciousness, so that everybody would recognize the fulfillment of a prophecy, just as the Tower of London prophecy has now been fulfilled. Nice gaff Winston. Nice gaff.